Okay, well, yeah, that holiday. I mean, along by the campfire with that. Yeah, well, it's a bloke who wrote a song about me. Song about a pub with no beer. Oh, man, would that hurt? You'd have to be an alcoholic to know that would hurt. And, yeah, my name is Duncan, and I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous these days, and that's a miracle for me because I never knew I had a problem with a drink. You know, it always made me feel good, and I always liked the after effect and the next morning. You know, I had my first drink at 17 as a young Nasho kid in the army, out at the Wagga Wagga Army Barracks at Kapooka, and one of the blokes there took me up to the what they call the wet canteen, and I'd never been in one, and I didn't know how a drink affected a bloke, or if it would kill him or not, or send him nuts, or it just made him happy. I had no idea. So I followed this bloke in. His name was George, and he's about 34, and a teacher got called up for Nasho as well. And anyway, I just sat and watched him at the bar, and the woman came over, and she said, "Yeah, g'day, what would you like?" And he said, "Oh, g'day, love, I'd schooner on you, please." And he put 2 bob on the counter, and while she's pouring him a drink, she looked at me, and, "How about you, young?" I said, "Oh, g'day, love, I'll have a schooner on you too." And I put me 2 bob on the counter, and she said, "Don't call me love, you're too young." You know, and I sort of shrunk down to my normal size. And anyway, I'm still pondering the ponderables of what this thing called booze would do to a fella. And anyway, George picks it up and looked at it and had a nice little white, Padres collar on it. And he took a sniff of it and went, mmm. And then he took down a big swallow, about half the schooner went down his throat, and he put it on the bar, and he turned around and went, "Oh," and you can see him visibly relax. I know, well, it didn't kill him. Makes him feel good, apparently. So I ended up, I grabbed mine from him. The lady put it over the bar to me, and I picked mine up. I copycatted him, monkey see, monkey do. And I looked at it and up at the light and sniffed it and took my half a glass schooner swig, and down it went. And boom! Wow! It was like a double atomic explosion in one in the guts and one in the head. And the after effect, the shock wave up and down the body was like the tidal wave coming in and out, waving up and down. All of a sudden, it settled. And, oh, did I feel good. Oh, I felt good. Right in the middle of me guts, I felt good. I've never felt so good, I found out in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous a bit later on that it doesn't matter who you are or what type of family life you had growing up. I mean, I've known people in AA who've come from good family Christian homes, and they turned out to be the only alcoholic. And, well, my parents were good people, but my older brothers or sisters, well, they were the alcoholics. And I had 2 younger sisters, and, as it turns out, 6 of us were actually alcoholics. And my 2 younger sisters, no. I mean, what parents really would want to have any child as an alcoholic, let alone 6 of them out of 8? And anyway, it was not a nice home a lot of the times, especially if Mum and Dad weren't in the house. It was not pretty. And, I could feel the mood swings in my older brothers and sisters, about 10 seconds before they were having one. And, it was time to duck out and hide or go somewhere. And, I found out that it doesn't matter what family life you've had growing up. It's what does the effect of a drink have upon you? It doesn't matter how many drinks you have. You can have 10 or 1. What effect does it have? And I heard in AA that some people hated the taste but loved the effect, and others loved the effect and not the taste, and vice versa. Well, me, I like both the effect and the taste. It didn't matter whether it was a beer or a wine or a whiskey or a brandy or a rum or a cocktail, or port, a tawny port. It didn't matter because it all worked for me. It made me feel good, and I had my first drink in the army, as I said, at the age of 17. And, wow, amazing. That night, when I had that first drink, it was as if the genie had come out of a bottle, my feet were firmly planted in that room, but my legs, my hips and my body, my head were about 50 feet above that building. And I could look down in there, and I knew I had the power to grant everybody 3 wishes. That's how good it made me feel. I've never felt that strong before. that good. It's an amazing effect. And every time I had a drink, I had that effect, and it always made me feel good. The unfortunate thing about that is, now that I'm in AA, was that it only happens to a person if you're an alcoholic. It doesn't happen to the average drinker, or the person who has a drink one night a week with their meal. It's like, what? Anyway, I had a lot to learn. And, my drinking started, as I said, in the army, and it lasted for 23 years. But along the way, there was 3 marriages, 3 divorces, 3 times suicide, 3 times dead. 3 times the hospital doctors and nurses pulled me back to life when I didn't want to be alive, and 3 times in prison. Now, how did I get into the rooms of AA? Well, I ended up in prison, didn't I? The 3rd time round. That was in September 92, 31 years of it now. And one of the blokes, the other crims inside, said, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Getting locked down as usual." He said, "Well, how about signing the recreation book? Because a few of us are going to be up in the recreation room, and we're going to have a chat, and, plenty of tea and coffee and biscuits to be had." And I went, "Oh, yeah, great company, No worries, I'll be there." Anyway, I walked up to the guardhouse at the end of the yard and spoke to the bloke in the office, and I said, "Look, I want to sign the recreation book for tonight." He goes, "Why?" I said, "Oh, just want to see what's happening." He goes, "Well, you don't have a drinking problem, do you?" I went, "No." He said, "Well, don't worry about it." He said, "You're not an alcoholic, are you?" And I said, "No." Didn't know what one was anyway, but I said, "No." He said, "Well, don't worry about it. You'll be right." And I thought, why is he trying to put me off? That's it. I said, "Look, I want to go. Maybe I'll learn something that might help me." Anyway, he let me sign the book, and that night, about 7-ish, he came round and opened up my cell door and walked me up to the recreation room, and there was this bunch of about 25 blokes there, all hanging around, and chairs and stuff. And then at the end of the room, there was this bloke sitting in a chair behind a desk, and on the wall was a couple of banners, and I'm thinking, what on earth is this? And I thought, what type of a place has got banners in it? And I'm thinking, Boy Scouts. And I think, oh, these guys must be all ex-Boy Scouts leaders who went astray, and they're trying to reclaim their position, get a few merit badges back up again. Anyway, I didn't pay much attention there for a while, and kept on going backwards and forwards for a coffee and more biscuits, and I was sticking biscuits in my pockets, and 2 in the hand and 2 in the mouth, and swinging a coffee. And I wasn't really paying much attention until suddenly I heard a bloke say, "As much as I like to have a drink, what I really wanted is to be left alone so I can drink the way I want." And I went, wow, I've thought of that before. And another bloke turned up and had us talk, and he said, he wanted to just get away from everyone, and on a deserted island like Robinson Crusoe or whatever. And, it was amazing. But I'm thinking, yes, I've had that. And another bloke wanted to be invisible so he could go into a pub and just sit quietly in the corner and drink his grog and not be bothered and don't have to pay for it. And I thought, I wanted that myself. And these guys are totally different from me. They never had the same home life. They never went to the same schools where I got bullied to. There was so many differences. I thought, how come I'm agreeing with these people? And then I realised somewhere along the line that I'd heard enough of these stories, but some of them weren't as bad as me, and some of them were way worse than me. And I thought, but we're all nuts. And then I looked up at those banners on the wall again. The left-hand one said the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the other one said the 12 Traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought, there's your problem. Alcohol. Stop drinking and you won't have to end up in prison all the time. Well, my problem isn't me drinking, it's me thinking. I'm nuts. Because in step 2, it said, step 1 said, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, but our lives had become unmanageable. Well, my life was never unmanageable. It was unbearable. That's what I knew. And then when I looked at step 2, it said, came to believe that a power greater than yourselves could restore us to sanity. I thought, that's me, I'm insane. I can't stop getting into trouble. Now, I've always been a good guy, so I thought, and good worker and a good boss and everything else like that, but how come I'm in trouble on third marriage and 3 suicides and now 3 times in prison? It's like, how do I end up like here? Anyway, at the end of the meeting, the blokes, we all rushed over to the urn and hot water urn and grabbing our coffees and our biscuits, and the bloke who was running the meeting, Tom, he said, what do you reckon? And before I could say anything real clever, I said, mate, you got me sold. I'm one of you, whatever that is. And he said to me something absolutely miraculous. He said, I'm an alcoholic who suffered from the disease of alcoholism, and now I'm free. And yet all I heard was, he's an alcoholic who is suffering from a disease. And I thought, that's my problem. You know what? It answered all my problems. I'm a puppet to this disease. You call it alcoholism. I thought, I didn't know what the term meant anyway. And he said, do you like to read? And I'm thinking, yes, Mad magazines and Phantom comics, really light literature. And he walks over to this desk where he'd been sitting and brings this book over, which turns out to be a copy of the big book that they had there all the time. And he said, good, yeah, it's yours. I said, what? He said, yeah, yours, you have it. And you know what? I've still got that same big book 31 years later. And I fell in love with AA, and I fell in love with the answers. A bloke came in one week and said, my sponsors helped me out with this and with that, and my sponsor helped me out to understand this, and he took me through the steps, and he introduced me to God and everything else. I'm thinking, but I couldn't deny the fact that he was different. And I thought, okay. I didn't know what a sponsor was. I'm thinking Nike, Schlesinger, Carlton United Breweries, World Health Organization. I thought, none of those big agencies are going to sponsor me out of prison, not with my track record. And I thought, that's it. I've got to get myself onto these things. And you know what? That word hope started creeping in, and I hated it, because the word hope meant I'd have to come out and try one more time. And I didn't have it in me. I really didn't. And boy, that was hard. That was hard. Anyway, about a week before I was due to get out, at the end of those 4 months, I asked one of the inmates who was on day release from time to time. I said, could you go and talk to Steve, and I want to meet him when I get out, and I want him to be my sponsor. So he did. He said he would, and that was on a Monday. And the Friday he came back and said, yeah, Steve's going to meet you when you get out. You'll be fine. A couple of minutes later, one of the other prisoners came up and said, what are you going to do on the outside from now, Dunk? And I went, I'm going to do time on the outside from now on. I'll never do time on the inside again. Do you know what? Although it wasn't me saying it, I actually believed it. That's the strength of this fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. It gives you the answers, and you can't help fall in love with it and believe it. All right? It's just amazing, and it works. It absolutely works. And anyway, and I got out, and Steve met me at, about 5 minutes after, no, not even 5 minutes, about a minute after I got out, and he asked me 3 pertinent questions. I was only about 30, 40 feet from the prison gates. He said, I believe you've got a question to ask me, what is it I've got that you want? And I went, I didn't want to answer that question. And I thought, well, he's not gay and I'm not gay, and he doesn't have a spooky girlfriend, and he doesn't have much cash because he's looking after a very sick father, and he's trying to run the family business at the same time. He's got a roof over his head, he's got 3 square meals a day, and he's got a spare room for me, which I can have for as long as I like. And then the penny dropped. What is it that he's got that I want? Anyway, I told him, and he goes, fair enough, okay, where do you want to go from here? And I thought, give me a break, you're really hard on me. Because I had my third wife had been beaten up and raped while I was in prison, and I knew I had to go and find her up in Sydney and, see if this marriage could work. I was in desperate trouble to find her and help her out, but then the penny dropped again. What is he asking? And I said, I want to do the steps. And he goes, when? Oh, give me a break, will you? Anyway, I said, now. He said, no, we're going to have breakfast at another member's place. His name's Tom. And we'll be there in a couple of minutes. We'll have breakfast with his wife and kids, and you'll be okay. You'll be okay. And I tell you what they did? They treated me like a normal human being, and I couldn't handle it. Could not handle it. It was just, terrible. I felt lower than a snake's belly. And I said to him afterwards, I said, "Don't you ever spring something like that on me again, or I'll bloody well kill you." And so after there, we drove over to his place, which was across the other side of town, and he sat down and opposite the coffee table in the lounge, and he said he took out the big book, his copy, and I took out mine, and he said, "What do you think about God?" And I went, "Oh, I actually spewed, I actually vomited. This acidic taste rose up, and the reflux rose up in my throat, and I'm choking, it's coming out of my nose and out of my mouth, and I'm crying." I said, "Don't ask me that question, And he opened up the big book and gave me a chance to relax a bit. And he opened up this other book they call the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, and he's talking to me from different parts of that big book and different parts of this. He said, "Dice." He goes, "Oh, yeah, you're not Tom. I'm thinking I'm talking to Tom over the road, where we just had breakfast." "No." He said, "Look, Duncan, you think that God can free you from the grip of this disease? And if he can, and you're willing to ask him, don't worry about how much pain and hurt and hatred you have towards him. Put that aside, and you think he has the power and the ability to free you from the drink. And if he does, then you're going to ask him to help you." And, it took me over an hour of debating and backwards and forwards and crying and half choking. And he said, "Dunk, what do you think? You think you can put all that stuff, all the emotions aside, and answer the question, does he have the power and the ability to free you from the drink, or does he not? If he does, are you prepared to ask him?" And eventually I said, yes. And then we got straight into the rest of the steps. Step 1, 2, 3, all the way through to 12. And you know what? It took me 40 hours to get through all that stuff with him. And I didn't stop. I was too scared to stop, because I know if I stop, I don't start again. That's just the way I'm built. If I'm full on, I'm full on. If I'm not, I'm not. And I wanted freedom from the grip of this disease so badly, I was prepared to go through whatever pain or hell I had to go through to be free. And 40 hours later of talking and cakes and bits and coffees and sandwiches that he kept on feeding me with and whatever, and oh man, what tears, buckets and buckets. I did crying for at least 5 years. I was crying nearly every day in the rooms of AA. I just couldn't stop crying. It was just a lot of stuff just kept coming up, and it kept on nearly choking me. And I'd phone my sponsor up, or I'd go around and see him, and he helped me out, to get through all that stuff. And there was a lot of crying involved, guilt and shame, remorse, and he helped me to get over those things. And you know what? I didn't even know how to forgive myself. And he said, "Doug, learn how to forgive others in AA, and then in time you'll learn how to forgive yourself." Well, that took about 7 years, but it worked, and I was able to make amends to my mum and dad. I was able to make amends to a couple of other old-time friends, but the rest, my ex-wives, no, kids don't want to know me. My brothers and sisters don't want to know me while they're drunks, and, they don't like seeing me because I go to AA and it's working for me. So, when they see me, they're looking in the mirror and going, well, if he's calling himself an alcoholic, what does that make me? And so, if that's just the way it is, because over these years, I've had to learn how to pay back all the money I owed, and that took 19 years, and finally all my debts were paid off, and my third marriage failed, unfortunately, and she was just an emotional cripple after what had happened to her, and nothing. She was driven away from wanting anything to do with a man, let alone a husband who's been in prison, and so, but one thing I've done right is stick with AA, and I've always had a sponsor, and my first sponsor, Steve, said, wherever you go, get a sponsor, wherever you go, get over it, and wherever you go, keep on doing the best you can to come to believe in the power greater than yourself that you can call God. That's easy for you to handle. And you know what? That finally happened. It took about 3.5 years for that. And today I can call God God, and it doesn't hurt me anymore. I don't have reflux problems with it anymore, or my stomach churning anymore. And it's like that. The word God doesn't hurt me anymore. And I've learned how to live again. And he said, whatever you do in the next 3 to 5 years, don't have anything to do with sex, politics, and religion. And I thought, well, 2 out of 3 is pretty good. And one thing I didn't do is I didn't listen to him when he said, don't do any work for the first 12 months. And I did go to work. The other thing he said was, go to the doctors, get a checkup, get on your vitamin B shots and all that sort of stuff, and I stick with AA, and I didn't do those things, and I ended up with the electric fleas and severe withdrawals and in a coma, and he found me and got me in the hospital, and with his help and the help of his couple of his mates over the next 12 months daily, they had to retrain me, from body training to watching me and drying me off and clothing me and changing my bed sheets all the time, day and night. Because, I had no control over my bowels. It was just the way it was for me after that coma, electric fleas. And that was 5 months, 6 months all up, 4 months in prison, 2 months outside of prison. It hit me, the, what do you call it? The side effects or the backlash, whatever you want to call it. And, the withdrawals were severe for me. And it took him and his mates 12 months to bring me back to earth and start helping me to see and to hear and to feel and to touch and to smell and what are socks and what are shoes and what is a hot water tap and a cold water tap. And, they really had to train me up like a 2-year-old baby. And, man, do I appreciate that. And, one day I said, I'm going to pay you back. I'm going to pay you back. And I said, no, what we do here, Doug, you got to do for others. When anybody anywhere reaches out for help, then you ought to mean to be there for them. And you do what we've done for you to them, and you'll be all right. I tell you what, all these years involved with Alcoholics Anonymous, 31 years in different parts of Australia, Sydney, Melbourne, Darwin, back to Melbourne, and now here in South Australia. It's amazing. Really amazing. 31 years. Wow. But it didn't start off easy, I've heard people, say they went through mild withdrawals, and some said they hardly went through any sort of withdrawals. And, well, good on you, because I must have experienced the worst kind of withdrawals that any alkie could when they're coming off the drink. And, if you seem to be as bad as what I was, get into a hospital, man, or mind wherever you are. Get into a hospital, get into a detox quick. And, it's not pretty. Don't wait for it to hit you. Get in there quick. The sooner the better. But, with AA, with the steps and the traditions and how Alcoholics Anonymous is structured, honestly, if you've got a drinking problem and you think you could be alcoholic, the other thing I didn't know was that alcoholics have an allergy to alcohol. Some people in the world have allergies to peanuts or chocolates or raspberries or whatever it might be. We're allergic to alcohol. We can't have alcohol in our system at all. Not even in cakes or what was the other one? Cough syrups or mouthwashes, or, read the label. If it says brewed or fermented, stay away from it. Stay away from it. And really check the labels out on any sort of medication. Really check the labels out. And because I paid a high price when I didn't one day. And, the doctor who gave me this strong medication for the influenza that I was suffering from, I was about 7 years sober at the time. Man, that 5 mils knocked me out like a light. And the next day I went and spoke to her about it. And, no, I checked the internet and I checked this, and no, you're right. there's no alcohol in it. And I said, you're a liar. I said, this is what happened to me. I said, I blacked out in my own flat, and I could have fell over and banged my head against the kitchen table and killed myself. Anyway, I went round the chemist and got the chemist to look through his big pharmacopoeia dictionary, whatever it was. I said, check these, like, what are these names? And he checked them out. He listened to me. He understood where I was coming from, and he checked out those names on the bottle. He said, yep, they are all alcoholic-based preservatives. Oh, there you go. So I went back to the doctors, and I screamed blue heaven in the face, and really lost my temper. Plus, I still had this influenza that knocked me around. But, yeah, she apologised, and after that, I read every label. I really read every label, and I warn people, don't give me something if it's been dipped in beer or wine. Don't give me it. For me, I've learned through the realms of AA, if you're an alcoholic, or even if you don't know you are, get into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, check it out, because your life can depend on it, really. And today I can say thank you to God for getting me into AA, because, wow, I would have been a goner, for sure. But, yeah, that's it for me. I'm really, really grateful to be sober in the rooms of AA, to be free from the grip of this disease. That is a blessing. So, yeah, Dennis, thank you for asking me to share, and I'm really privileged to do so.